The storm had just passed over the valley when Clara Dawson stumbled out of the thick brush, her hand pressed tightly against her thigh, crimson soaking through her torn cotton dress. Her horse had bolted miles back, spooked by lightning, leaving her alone on the dusty trail somewhere between the foothills and her father's ranch. Every step sent a pulse of pain through her leg, and though the thunder had rolled away, the echo of her own ragged breathing filled the silence. The wound was swelling fast. Her skin burned. And in that endless stretch of golden plains, she saw only one hope, a distant figure riding toward her, silhouetted against the blinding daylight. The rider was Samuel Hargrove, a rancher known across Jackson County for his quiet strength and stubborn decency. A man of 36, with sun-creased eyes and a scar that ran from his temple to his jaw, a mark from a cattle stampede that nearly took his life years ago. He'd been out checking the lower pasture fences when he spotted Clara, limping and waving one trembling hand. As he dismounted, dust rising around his boots, he saw the dark stains spreading down her dress. Without hesitation, he dropped to his knees beside her, her voice trembled as she tried to explain. The horse spooked, the fence post splintered, something sharp tore into her leg. She hadn't realized how deep it was until she couldn't walk anymore. Samuel didn't waste time asking more questions. He looked once at the wound and felt his stomach tighten. It was bad, already red and swelling fast beneath the dirt. Infection could set in before nightfall. "Hold still," he said firmly, his voice calm but urgent. Clara, only 23, and new to the harsh rhythms of ranch life, nodded with wide eyes. Samuel tore a strip from his flannel shirt, his hands steady despite the sweat on his brow. The nearest town doctor was 10 miles away, too far for a wound like this. "I'll have to stop the swelling now," he muttered. Her breath hitched as he cleaned the cut with whiskey from his saddlebag, the sting so sharp it sent tears streaming down her cheeks. Then, he did something unthinkable for its time, a gesture that in that era could have been easily misjudged but was born purely from mercy. He lifted the hem of her dress just enough to see the wound clearly, tied the makeshift bandage tight, and pressed down with his bare hand to slow the swelling. For a long minute, neither spoke. The wind carried the scent of sagebrush, the cry of hawks overhead. He worked quickly, methodically, with a respect that needed no words. When he looked up again, he saw her biting her lip, trying not to cry, not from pain, but from the fear that she might not make it home. That he wrapped his jacket around her shoulders and helped her onto his horse, holding her steady as they began the slow ride toward his ranch. The sun was still high, but the plains stretched endlessly. Every hoofbeat seemed to echo her heartbeat. She had grown up hearing tales of men like Samuel Hargrove, hard, lonely ranchers who lived by their own code, but never imagined she'd owe her life to one. At the Hargrove Ranch, the land spread wide and quiet, with only the soft lowing of cattle in the distance and the whitewashed porch creaking in the breeze. Samuel carried her inside like she weighed nothing, setting her gently on a cot near the hearth. His house was simple, wood walls, a table with half-finished saddle straps, and an old rifle above the door. He found clean cloth, boiled water, and herbs he'd learned to use from his late mother. For the next few hours, he stayed by her side, changing the dressing, checking her pulse, whispering soft reassurances. The swelling had begun to ease slightly, but the fever that followed worried him. Clara drifted in and out of sleep, her dreams filled with flashes of the storm, her father's face, and Samuel's calm eyes. As night fell, Samuel sat by the window, listening to the coyotes howl in the distance. He hadn't expected this day to bring anyone into his world. Since his wife and son died in a barn fire 3 years ago, he had lived with only his cattle, his land, and his guilt. Helping this young woman felt like something more than duty, it felt like redemption trying to find its way back into his life. Days passed. Clara's leg began to heal, though she still winced when she walked. Each morning, Samuel brought her tea brewed from prairie mint and honey, insisting she rest. She protested. Of course, she wasn't one to sit idle, but he reminded her with a quiet half-smile that the land would wait for her strength to return. They talked as the sun climbed high and the shadows shortened. She told him about her dreams of owning a horse ranch someday, raising mustangs, and proving that women could work the land as fiercely as men. He listened, surprised by how her words lit something long dormant in him. In her determination, he saw the spirit he'd lost, the part of himself that had once believed in second chances, but their peace didn't last. One afternoon, as Samuel rode out to check the north fence, he spotted riders in the distance, 3 men, rough-looking, strangers. He felt the chill of trouble immediately. By evening, they arrived at his ranch, claiming to be bounty hunters looking for a runaway outlaw's daughter. Samuel's jaw tightened. Clara had told him nothing of that sort, but when he asked her quietly that night, her silence spoke volumes through tears. She confessed that her father had been falsely accused of cattle theft by a wealthy ranch baron named Huxley, a man known for buying off lawmen. When her father refused to sell their land, Huxley burned their barn and swore vengeance. Clara had been riding to plead her father's innocence when the storm threw her from her horse. Now, Huxley's men were closing in. Samuel didn't hesitate. "You'll stay hidden here," he said. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with the old fire of a man who'd lost too much already to let injustice win again. The next morning, when Huxley's men returned demanding to search the property, Samuel stood his ground. The confrontation turned violent: fists, gunfire, and dust. When the smoke cleared, the men retreated, leaving Samuel bruised but standing tall. Clara wept when she saw him, blood on his arm, his shirt torn. He simply smiled, saying, "Looks like the swelling's mine now." That humor, small and rough as it was, broke the tension. In that moment, the barriers between them, the grief, the fear, the loneliness, finally gave way to something softer. As the days rolled into weeks, Clara's leg fully healed. The ranch began to hum with quiet life again. They worked side by side, mending fences, feeding livestock, laughing at the absurd stubbornness of an old mule named Rusty. Samuel taught her to rope calves. She taught him to see beauty in the smallest things: the pattern of dust in sunlight, the calm after rain. By early spring, wildflowers painted the hills, and word came from town that Huxley's crimes had finally caught up with him. Clara's name was cleared. She could go home. Yet when she looked at the dirt road leading away from the ranch, she felt a hollow ache in her chest. Samuel didn't ask her to stay, but his eyes said what words never could. She rode off at dawn, her healed leg steady, her heart uncertain. Weeks passed. Samuel returned to his quiet life, though something had shifted inside him. The sound of her laughter still echoed in the barn, the scent of her mint tea lingered faintly in the kitchen. Then one morning, as he was fixing a gate near the pasture, he heard the familiar sound of hooves approaching. He turned, and there she was, smiling, wind in her hair, her eyes glinting with the kind of courage only the wild can forge. "I couldn't stay away," she said softly. "You saved my life, Samuel. But more than that, you reminded me what it means to fight for something good." He didn't answer right away. He simply took off his hat, nodded once, and helped her down from the horse. The two of them stood side by side in the open field, the wind rustling through the grass, the sun bright and endless above. For the first time in years, Samuel Hargrove allowed himself to feel hope, raw, unguarded, and alive. Their story spread quietly through the valley, a tale of courage, kindness, and the kind of healing that can't be measured in medicine or time. The folks who knew Samuel said the ranch seemed lighter after that, filled with laughter again. And Clara? She stayed, building a new life on the land that had once nearly taken hers. Together, they ranched, rebuilt, and found strength in each other's scars. Sometimes, in the quiet of the evening, Samuel would look at her and think of that stormy day, the fear, the pain, the moment when he'd done what others might have called unthinkable but what he knew was simply right. Because sometimes the bravest thing a person can do isn't to fight with fists or guns, but to care when the world has forgotten how.